The program we are about to present is a report on the gay liberation movement. We point that out for those who do not wish to see, or perhaps do not wish their children to see, any portrayal of homosexual behavior.
In the 70s, that's when the city really changed.
This is a time where there's violence and anger towards the gay community.
The police did not like gay people. They would sooner beat them up than help them.
If the police are not protecting the community, who is? I was working on a totally separate story. I happened to be having a conversation with a police officer up in the Bay Area, and he made an offhanded remark about the Lavender Panthers. This was sort of an armed vigilante group that operated as a self-defense gang in San Francisco in the early 70s. I'd seen Ray Broshears' name, so I typed in Ray Broshears. This is like a reverend who wore a clerical collar, who carried a shotgun around, and was screaming about police brutality and was protecting the LGBT community.
And today, a leader of San Francisco's gay community predicted trouble for homosexuals everywhere.
The vote last night, Miami, reflects society's attitude. They need a whipping boy. They're angry. They're upset over the economy. And so that we're going to be that whipping boy. They're going to go after the homosexuals of America.
San Francisco was kind of where it was all happening. If you were a young gay man, this is your mecca.
San Francisco was on the forefront of cultural action, where a lot of changes were happening and people could come out here and really have that freedom to be themselves. That's what happened in the 70s here. It just exploded with a sense of freedom.
This is Gay San Francisco, an inside look at the life of San Francisco's homosexuals. They number 90,000 at least, according to police department figures. They work to conceal their sexual orientation by day, and only at night do they show their true colors. The city's downtown Tenderloin district is the home ground of the always visible segment of the city's homosexuals and transvestites.
The Tenderloin was a different level of crazy. It was a drug-induced crazy. They were stealing, they were shooting, they were killing. There was nothing nice about the Tenderloin. I never could figure out why Ray would put the center down there at first until I figured out what he was reaching out for.
Helping Hand Center was basically a safe space for gay, trans, lesbian kids if they needed, a place to go that wasn't their home, if it wasn't safe for them.
The runaways would come there, and they'd have no money, no job, so they would start prostituting, or drug dealers would get a hold of them and start getting them to sell for them. And so it was just a really bad situation, and I understood then why he had it there. He had to.
Homosexuality is an enigma. Even in this era of bold sexual mores, it remains a subject that people find disturbing, embarrassing, and the reluctance to discuss it. Yet there is a growing concern about homosexuals in society, about their increasing visibility.
They can be anywhere. They can be judges, lawyers. We ought to know we've arrested all of them.
The attitudes towards the gay population was nothing like it is today. There was a real danger to be exposed as gay, to walk down the street. If you were assaulted as a young gay man, you might go to the police, but the police were almost a danger to you if they knew that you were gay.
There was a lot of police harassment of gay bars, gay people, and it was sort of endemic in the whole city structure. Compton's sort of brought that to a head and said, okay, in this little corner cafeteria, shit's gonna stop right now. It was a hot August night in 1966, and it took place in the Tenderloin at a cafeteria that people went to, an all-night cafeteria.
The people there basically fought back, and it created this huge riot, and there was apparently wigs flying everywhere, and coffee was being poured on the police, and the police definitely responded with force and beat a lot of people up that night.
I don't think it got enough media attention. And I think that's what makes Stonewall so significant, is that it got the media attention. Stonewall was also a lot of people who were just sick and tired of not having their own space and being kicked around. And they finally just pushed back.
That was like the start of the breakthrough of everything. Because you can't keep people oppressed forever. You just can't.
In the early 70s, there were a lot of, local street gangs, which some of them were more organized gangs, but some of them were just packs of kids that would go around and they'd beat up on gay people in that neighborhood. It's Independence Day, July 4th, and Ray is walking out of the Helping Hands Center, and he's just going home, which is really just a couple blocks away, and this swarm of teenagers just surround him.
They waited for him to come out of the center, and when he did, they basically went after him with clubs and all kinds of things and beat him almost to death.
He decided at that moment that he was going to form something. And so only a couple of days later, he's calling a press conference to announce the Lavender Panthers.
Next thing he does is shows up at a press conference with guns. And the gay community in San Francisco went absolutely bonkers.
He stood at the front of the room, and he has two of his Lavender Panthers sitting on either side of him. And he kind of, bellows out to the crowd like, we're just not gonna take this anymore. And it's this big announcement that they're gonna fight back with whatever they have, whether they have chains or billy clubs, they're going to go on the offensive.
We don't want guns. We don't want mace. We don't want the billy clubs. Like the one you see over in the corner there. We don't want these things. But by God, do you want to be beaten, Mike?
Ray had a great understanding of how media worked, and he knew that if he held a shotgun across his chest while wearing a clerical collar, he was going to get media attention.
It was all portrayal. It was marketing, in a way. I mean, he was a brilliant marketing man without even knowing it. With his gun, he would hold it above his head. I knew he wasn't going to load it and shoot anybody, but nobody else knew that.
He just wanted to make some noise and show that the gay community was tougher than people thought.
Most of the times it was like gang affiliated. In order to get into the gang, you got to go beat up a gay person. So if we heard that these things were going to happen, we would try to prevent it. We would get to a place and the doors would just burst open and we'd come flying out. They knew that Lavender Panthers were coming. They would go.
Ray, he had his own brand of activism, which a lot of others did not like. A lot of the other activists wanted to be accepted. Ray wanted to be feared. One way to describe Ray is like in the civil rights movement, you had Malcolm X and you had Martin Luther King. And I think Ray clearly would have been more like the Malcolm X side. Ray believed that, violence could be a good thing in that it triggered some change or it triggered fear in people's minds.
The gay community in San Francisco absolutely believed he would take our movement back, not forward.
We are all in agreement in stating that the Reverend Ray Broshears does not represent the gay community. We feel that the use of violence to respond to violence solves nothing. Indeed, it only escalates the climate of hate and fear and ignorance.
You have people that say, this guy's a lunatic, he's gonna get people killed, we can't have armed vigilantes roaming our streets. That's what the police are for.
Ray would get a lot of death threats. You sometimes have got to ruffle the feathers in order to really get that truth out there.
Ray was born in 1935 in a small town in the Midwest. He goes to a Bible college when he's about 16 and then enters the Navy thereafter. Something happened at the Navy that I think changed his life for the worst.
I think it stemmed from him being raped. He never really talked about it, but the energy that I got from him was like when that happened to him, you know, he had, I guess, thought of life one way, and when that happened, it just shattered whatever he thought was life, and it replaced it with a lot of anger. But I think maybe he also needed that anger in order to do the things he did, to stand up the way he did. It was like his fire.
We don't even bug them. We just stay on our side of the street and they stay on theirs. And then they look like they're really out to bust us.
What do you think about the fact they're packing in rifles?
I don't like the idea that much, and I think that they should do something about it.
So the Panthers existed from 1973 to the spring of 1974. The group got a little too violent with a few neighborhood kids. Those kids' parents complained to the local police department, and the police department basically came to Ray and said, if you don't shut down the Panthers, we're going to send you to prison.
There was a lot of pressure on Ray, you know, and I think that finally he just said, that's enough. If my own community doesn't appreciate it, then forget it.
It really is like a rise and fall type of story where there's a moment in 1973 when he's getting national attention for this group that he's created. He's being written up in Time, he's being written up in Rolling Stone, Coast magazine did a huge feature on him. And then in 1974, when they force the Panthers to shut down, it's kind of like he's pushed out of the scene a little bit, and there are new characters that come in. This is when Harvey Milk starts his rise. Ray was jealous. Ray wanted to be the figurehead for this movement, but he wasn't going to be. And his story sort of fades because I think partially Ray himself faded.
He was getting rid of a lot of that anger he felt too from his own past. And once it ended, I think it was really the end of Ray, quite honestly. He had a cerebral hemorrhage in his apartment, and he was there for a few days.
There is an element that whoever is in power at that moment gets to write the history. And Ray certainly lost power. There were plenty of people, historians and activists, that were happy to downplay his influence in this time period.
So I was looking at this book called The Behind the Mask of the Mattachine, and just one sentence I thought was interesting. In response, some joined evangelist Ray Broshears' street vigilantes, the Pink Panthers. And I thought, wow, this is a 500-page book, and there's one reference, and it's wrong. It wasn't the Pink Panthers, it was the Lavender Panthers. So talk about being erased from history. It's pretty poignant.
I think if Ray were alive today, he'd be furious. I think that he would be protesting every single day in front of the White House. He'd probably be thrown in jail every couple of days because he's doing something crazy to get attention.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be up there, probably trying to get to the White House. with his shotguns, like, I'm coming for you. I can see that, really. Make that orange Cheeto run.
Ray proved that it was okay to stand up for the LGBT community. And I think that his legacy is that he was an early fighter in this very long war that's still ongoing to this day.
I would tell him now that look at all he's done. Look at all the things that he did led up to where we're at now. I mean, we have gay marriage, we have gay rights, we have things that never thought would happen in the 70s is all happening now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the ground that he broke. Taking a lot of courage to really, to do what he did and be as hated as he was, and still just thumb his nose at him and say, you don't like me too bad. This is me. I mean, that was Ray.